So people hit the streets once again over the weekend for the return of the No Kings protests, the No Kings Part 2, the No Kings Part 2, the sequel, the No Kings Revisited. It's really just a protest about nothing, folks. That's what it comes down to. We discussed it the last time there was a No Kings protest. You saw lots of people in attendance that just did not have any real stance on anything, no real motivation, no principle, no policy. It'd be one thing if they protested about, healthcare or a certain policy, or maybe, ending the wars in Ukraine and Israel and Gaza. If it was something like that, I would have more consideration. But of course, this got so much attention because it was literally just a protest about nothing. So, as the BBC pointed out, millions turned out for an anti-Trump No Kings protest across the United States. And you can see there the people rallying together, no kings, no kings, which is just, at this point, it's just a humorous catchphrase. Because like I said, they're not angry at, Trump hiding the Epstein files. They're not angry at a certain objectable term that Trump is doing. They're just angry that Trump is president. If it was Joe Biden still as president, or Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton doing everything that Trump was doing, they would be rushed to sleep. But because Trump is the cancer sore to the worst and worst of American politics, they're not angry at American politics. They're angry at the fact that Trump is the face of it. So it goes on to say huge crowds took part in the No Kings protests against President Donald Trump's policies in cities across the United States on Saturday, including New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Miami, and Los Angeles. Thousands packed New York City's iconic Times Square and streets all around, with people holding signs with slogans like "Democracy, not monarchy," and "The Constitution is not optional." Really? Really? Where was the constitutional not optional when Joe Biden was hiring people to crack down on free speech? That we need to silence out haters out there. We need to target social media. Where were those people? Where were those people when they were kicking, 500,000 people off the ballots in New York State? Where was that? Where was those protests? Oh, that's right. Because it was a Democrat doing that, so it's all good. You're allowed to have kings as long as it's the kings on their side. That's how it works. Ahead of the demonstrations, Trump allies accused the protests of being linked with the far-left Antifa movement and condemned them for what they called the Hate America rally. Several U.S. states had mobilized the National Guard, but organizers said that the events, which drew nearly 7 million people, were peaceful. Since returning to the White House in January, Trump has expanded the scope of presidential power, using executive orders to dismantle parts of the federal government and to deploy National Guard troops to U.S. cities despite objections by state governors. Again, Biden, Obama, the Bushes, the Clintons, they all did similar tactics. They all did similar tactics. That what Trump is doing, he's doing legally. He's not evading any orders. He's not going down against the state or going against federal jurisdictions. He's doing everything legally, but everyone's angry about what he's doing because it's Trump that's doing it. That Biden, Obama, and the Democrats and Republicans, all the rest of the establishment, did similar tactics. They all voted for the big, beautiful bill. They're all voting for, the worst of America. So the fact that everyone's trying to relate this to Trump because he's the president and not angry at their own politicians shows how ineffective this protest is. It's very ineffective. Again, it's a protest about nothing. It's the same with the pussy hat marches when Trump was in first term position. Everyone was protesting that Trump is not my president. Okay, well, what are you going to challenge him with? What policy measures are you trying to convince him of? Are you protesting against healthcare? Are you protesting against Open borders? Are you protesting against the endless wars? Because no one's doing this. No one's doing that. But they're angry that Trump is still president. He has also called on the administration's top law enforcement officials to prosecute his perceived enemies. The president says his actions are necessary to rebuild a country in crisis and has dismissed accusations that he's behaving like a dictator or a fascist as hysterical. Again, no different than any other president. Biden was a fascist. Obama was a bit of a fascist. He was turning in that direction. You live in an oligarchy. We live in an oligarch system. So this idea that, we're protecting democracy, that you have to install someone like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, or even in my purview, you have to have someone like Mark Carney, hand-selected by the oligarchs themselves, hand-selected by the World Economic Forum, hand-selected by the banker billionaire class. Oh yeah, he's going to save democracy. Because that's what the billionaire class love. They love democracy. But some critics warn some of the moves by his administration are unconstitutional and a threat to democracy. In an interview with Fox News set to air on Sunday, Trump appeared to address the rallies. A king, this is not an act, Trump said in a preview clip of the administration. They're referring to me as a king. I am not a king. In New York, sections of the crowd regularly erupted into chants of "This is what democracy looks like" as near constant drumbeat boomed into the background. Helicopters and drones could be seen flying overhead, and police stood on the sidelines. Again, where were these people protesting when Bernie Sanders, during the Democratic primary, got cheated out again, and they installed Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to lead the Democratic ticket? Two people who are on the lowest pillar of the Democratic race, the lowest you can get, and they elevated them to the top because Barack Obama called the rest of the candidates and blackmailed them to go ahead and vote for Joe Biden. They demanded the other candidates to pledge for Joe Biden because they didn't want Bernie Sanders, because they did not want actual change, a democratic change. These are people that are against democracy. People that are against democracy are the ones that are protesting that Trump is a king. But you've been living in an oligarchy this whole time, and no one's been protesting about how Bernie Sanders got cheated, how the Democratic Party stole the primary, at least. We were unsure about the 2020 election. You can't even talk about that without being demonetized on YouTube. They're not angry about that. They're not angry about the wars. They're not angry about economics. They're not worried about... It's a rally about nothing. It's a rally about nothing. But nonetheless, it got all the mainstream attention, including MSNBC, and Morning Joe covered it in the most ridiculous way, comparing it to the Tea Party movement in 2009. Now, I'm going to show you the clip here, and then I'm going to tell you why associating this with the Tea Party is the stupidest comparison you can compare in this. So take a look.
And the Washington Post editorial board has a new piece entitled "Like the Tea Party of 2009, No Kings protests are a warning to Trump." And it reads in part, quote, "The Democratic establishment dismissed the Tea Party movement in 2009. Now Republican leaders are making the same mistake as they dismiss millions of demonstrators around the country as little more than pawns of George Soros, the billionaire financier and Democratic donor. It is politically perilous to blame propaganda or malign foreign influence for authentic passion in a country as polarized as the United States. Speech and protests are safety valves for angry Americans to let off steam between elections. They are also a warning for those in charge. After Obama's landslide victory back in 2008, Democrats deluded themselves with the idea that they could hold a large majorities for years to come. They plowed ahead with unpopular laws that most of the country disliked and were punished with a generational rebuke in the 2010 midterms. Trump and
that was at the same time they're leaving out the fact that there was also the Occupy Wall Street movement, which directly involved Barack Obama and the Democrats. And they did not ignore that. They went after those people. They condemned them as terrorists, economic terrorists that were protesting against Wall Street, protesting that Barack Obama and the Democrats bailed out Wall Street during the 2008 financial collapse, that Barack Obama kicked 5.1 million families out of their houses and deliberately sabotaged the market so that BlackRock and Citigroup can buy up the real estate of the homes that people were kicked out of during the financial collapse. He bailed out Wall Street. He didn't help with the striking teachers. He did not help the automotive industry, and he screwed over more people. He was more assistant to Wall Street than George W. Bush. That's why Barack Obama became president and got his cabinet selected by an email from Citigroup. So, comparing the No Kings rally that happened over the weekend to the Tea Party, and it's 2009 again. It's kind of ridiculous because at least the Tea Party, before it got corroded by the Koch brothers, because you know that organizations and protests do get corroded by the billionaire class. They even admit that George Soros plays a hand into a lot of these protests, and no doubt there's some billionaire escapade that is trying to buy up political movements to sabotage, to further divide the country. Because again, these are people that could not care less about democracy. Cannot care less. They hate countries. They hate the idea of Americans for America. They hate the idea of nationalities. They hate it. They're using people to their disposal. So the difference, though, is that in 2009, the Tea Party movement was actually challenging the Republican Party themselves. These were Republican voters that were challenging the party because they got wiped out by Barack Obama, and the Tea Party was going after Republicans saying, hey, if you guys want to win, you have to listen to our demands, you have to listen to our policies, and we're going to challenge you. We're going to challenge the party so that you get into line with our motivations, and you can actually get better because you respond to your constituents. That's the difference. Whereas this heinous No Kings protest is an absolute embarrassment because it's not actually challenging anybody. It's not deliberately motivating specifically to a certain person or a certain party. They're not challenging the Democrats to say, hey, you guys want to beat Trump? Here's how you do it. Meet our demands. Listen to your constituents. Work for the working class party. Don't be against people. Don't epitomize people. Don't go after the white voters and tell them that they're racist. Don't use misogyny. Don't say that they're deplorables. Actually work with blue-collar people. That's what they should be protesting, but they're not. They're not challenging the Democrats. They're not challenging the likes of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all those heinous criminals that are working in the Capitol. No, they're going out and chanting once again that Donald Trump is ugly and Donald Trump's the ugly face of America and we can't have that. I don't like seeing Donald Trump on camera. That's it. It's just a personal vindication against Donald Trump. It's nothing actually political. It's nothing actually motivating about this, which is why it's empty, it's vague, it's pointless. And that's why MSNBC can give good coverage on this, because there's nothing to challenge there. There's no motivation to challenge either side of the establishment. Let's see some more of this.
His supporters might consider whether they are making the same mistake ahead of 2026. And David Drucker, again.
No, I would say that not releasing the Epstein files is a mistake that's leading to 2026. I'd say continue on the Ukraine war is a mistake that they're making for 2026. I'd say giving more money to Israel, allowing them to continue on the genocide even after the hostage exchange is a mistake for 2026. I'd say cutting people's healthcare benefits. A lot of MAGA supporters, that's what Steve Bannon tells you, is a lot of MAGA supporters are on Medicare. They're on Medicaid. And you cutting that out, dodging it out to give $1 trillion to the Pentagon that has failed every single audit they've ever gotten and received, that's what's failing for 2026. But of course, MSNBC is never going to point that out. None of the media is ever going to point that out because the media is also complicit with the same agenda if it was for the Democrats. If the Democrats did this, they wouldn't be challenging it. But of course, because it's Trump, it's easier for them to make people rally against Trump than it would be to actually break down the policies that actually despise against Americans' interests, because their policies are exactly what the Democrats want. Let's not forget that when Trump was first in power from 2016 to 2020, the Democrats gave Trump a huge amount of leverage. They gave him more surveillance powers. They gave him more abilities to do more war. Trump, a guy that they despise, the guy that they say is Hitler, they gave him more power as a president to commit more war crimes. Why would you do that to someone you call Hitler? Oh, because they want him to do the war crimes. So when Trump finally took rockets and bombed Syria, that's when MSNBC, the mainstream media, the Democratic Party, that's when they started calling him presidential. You're very presidential. They had Brian Williams quoting Leonard Cohen. He was about to jizz himself because of Donald Trump committing war crimes. That's what's so despicable about this. Anyway, let's see more of this.
Protests were peaceful, and what we're hearing from the White House, from the Speaker of the House, even from the top guy himself, that these people don't matter. These people are in some way nefarious. These people somehow don't like America or hate America, as they put it. That's a lot of people to invalidate, I'll say.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of the old saying, can anybody play this game? Instead of running to the right wing or to the left wing, and of course in this case with the Republicans constantly playing to the base, you might try playing to the 51%, and it might do you some good. And I think what we saw with these protests this weekend, I was very curious, by the way, to see what the turnout was going to be and what it was going to look like. I spent a lot of time along the coast in southern Delaware for the past 6-7 months, and I've talked to a lot of these people. A few hundred protesters have showed up every weekend waving signs at traffic. A lot of them are retirees, right? I mean, these are not people dressed in black causing mayhem. And what you found is a lot of concern about executive overreach. So here I saw that sort of supersized. And what you saw was a lot of energy, a lot of concern. And when you can get this many people into the streets to do a quintessentially American thing, which is protest the government, our entire system was designed so that you were allowed to protest the government.
So he makes the point that people are allowed to protest, and I agree with that. I agree with that statement. That's part of the First Amendment. People have the right to assemble. People have the right to protest. I could disagree with what they're protesting. A lot of people can disagree or agree with what people are protesting, but you have to allow them to the ability to assemble, to peacefully demonstrate, and that's what they're doing here. I disagree with the whole no king's motive. It's a protest about nothing, but I agree with that. The problem with this is that these are the same people that will make the statement for this if it's against Donald Trump, but they don't defend the rallies when it came to the Freedom Convoy, when it came to people protesting against COVID mandates, when it came to people going after big pharmaceuticals, when it came to people protesting force the vote. They crack down on those people. They say they don't have a right to free speech. They don't have the right to that. But it's okay if it works against someone like Donald Trump. You're allowed to protest if it works against someone like Donald Trump. But if you're protesting against, say, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or George Soros or Bill Gates or Anthony Fauci, if you would go against our billionaires, that's when it gets chaotic. And that's where I find it so hilarious. They showed the B-roll footage of people holding up the poster saying, you know, people over billionaires. I agree with that statement. The problem is they're only going after one side of the billionaire class. That's definitely directed to only people like Elon Musk and Larry Ellison, which I agree. I don't trust them one bit. But that's only one side of the operation, because you would also then have to criticize Bill Gates. You would have to go after George Soros. You would have to go after Jeff Bezos. You would have to go after Apple, Google, all these other people that are anti-democratic by nature and have caused so much diversion, destruction to American society. They are the ones that are crumbling the structure that is the American Republic. And you didn't see protests happening this frequent when Joe Biden was president. If it was a Democrat running the country right now, would they have no King's protests? Would they champion that phrase? No. So this is just an absolute just disaster, because it's not actually challenging the structure that they should be challenging. Just like I said, there's a huge difference between this and what happened in 2009, 2008. Because the people that were on Occupy Wall Street or the Tea Party, they were actually challenging the powerful. They were actually coming with provisions. They were actually coming with arguments. They were defending a policy. They were challenging the status quo. This doesn't actually challenge anything. This doesn't challenge anything. Oh, people over billionaires. Okay. Well, how are you going to challenge that? How are you going to challenge the billionaires? What terms are you coming to? What arguments are you making? What policies will you implement to change? That they don't have an answer for that. So that's why they're able to do this in large masses, and the media is allowed to cover all this. Here's this guy, Matt Van Swal. This is a protest in Marion, North Carolina. So this is the No Kings protest in Marion, North Carolina, about 30 minutes drive from Asheville, North Carolina. Now, Asheville, we know, was the center for the hurricane damage. And we know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris completely betrayed North Carolina. We know that Trump also betrayed North Carolina. They're still dealing with the aftermath of a hurricane that they're still not getting funding, that FEMA's taken abuse of, and they're still getting neglected. So you would think these No King protesters, since they're only 30 minutes away, would try to help the people of Asheville. They'd be trying to defend the people that got kicked out of their trailers and are now homeless because their homes got destroyed. They can't get the insurance. The trailers that were given to FEMA, they want back, and now they're out in the streets. Are they defending those people? No. No. But they'll go out in mass waves like this when it comes to being angered at Donald Trump. So look at this. Look at this. That's it. No Kings in the USA. No Kings, no fear. What is that? What does that do? Is that policy? No Kings in the USA. I think you're way too late on that. I think the fact that you live in an oligarchy already is dismantling this argument that, oh, Trump is a king. You live in a damn oligarchy. Your vote doesn't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. And whether you're in a red or a blue state, both sides are going to screw you. And since no one's willing to come to conclusion and challenge the system, they're just going out to the streets like idiots with these signs that are just completely virtue signaling garbage. Here's another one. I meme, therefore I am. It says, meet Lucy Martinez. Martinez is an elementary school teacher from Chicago who mocked the assassination of Charlie Kirk during yesterday's No Kings protest. She works at Nathan Hale Elementary School in Chicago. People with extreme views have no right to be around or educate her children. So this is an adult mocking the assassination of an American because she's completely manipulated. She's trapped within a cult of the Democrats. And same with the Republicans, the mainstream Republicans, not people like Tucker Carlson who are able to challenge a lot of the narrative, but the people that are still stepped ahead in the mainstream Republican side, they're trapped in a cult. And these are the followers. They're mocking an assassination of an American just because they disagree with that person. Watch.
Hey! You ever heard of Ozempic, you fat ass?
Like how disturbing that is. So End Wokeness pointed this out. It says, No Kings, brought to you by the party that bulldozed parks over a cult. Remember this? Remember this? Where were the protesters for this? Where was the No Kings rally for this? That they were demolishing skate parks, that were forbidding people to go outside to interact with your family. Don't you think that's kind of king-like? That's kind of a monarchy? That, hey, the peasants aren't allowed to interact with each other because of a virus that we created? Don't you think that's a little extreme? That goes against constitutional law? No, of course, they were for that. They were for that. They were for big pharmaceuticals. They were for the lockdowns, the mandates. They were for all this. Just like they're for censorship. Just like they're for war. So, having this rally is an absolute joke. Here's Revolutionary Blackout Network. MSNBC openly endorses Donald Trump's regime change efforts in Venezuela. This is the resistance in a nutshell. The No Kings rally is a pro-war movement organized by a pro-war party. So they're not angry at this. They're not angry at healthcare being restricted. They're not angry at the things they should be angry about. But they're angry that Trump is the face of it. Again, if it was Hillary Clinton doing the exact same thing, they'd be celebratory about this. They'd be celebratory about this. And it's even gone to Canadian terms, which I could not believe this. So this is in Canada. This is literally in Canada. And Ryan Gertson says, where are these Canadians during COVID when actual tyranny was taking place? So Canadians had their own No Kings rally to protest against an American president. Meanwhile, Mark Carney, who's our prime minister, is acting like an authoritarian dictator among Canadians. This should prove to you how brainwashed these people are. You're in a foreign country. America has nothing to do with you. Trump has nothing to do with you. And right now, you have your own government to worry about. But none of these people are protesting that government. They're protesting the fact that Trump is president of the United States. Wow. How just crazy that is. And look at...
No Trump, no KKK! No fascist USA! No Trump, no KKK! No fascist USA! No Trump, no KKK! No fascist USA! No Trump, no KKK! No fascist USA!
These are Canadians in a Canadian city going after a U.S. president. Hey, where's the rally that calls out Mark Carney for lying to us? Hey, how about the rally to demand Mark Carney fix this trade war? How about that? How about protesting the fact that you're wasting taxpayer money flying back and forth to the United States and coming out short? Where's that protest? Where's the protest that for Tamara Leach and Chris Barber? Where are the protests for that? Where are the protests for the unlawful tactics of cracking down on people for social media posts? Where's the protest for that? Where's the protest to save ostriches? To save the ostriches at Universal Ostrich Farm in BC. Of course, they're not going to protest for that. I assume that majority of the people in this crowd are the same idiots that say CBC is much a reliable source than X or social media or independent journalists or your own eyes. They probably giggled when 22 Minutes did that horrific comedy sketch about the ostriches being culled. This is embarrassment. This is an utter embarrassment. And coming from a Canadian, it's an utter embarrassment that we're having rally calls to denounce a U.S. president. It's not even our country. It's not our country to deal with this. Next, you're going to tell me this coming weekend there's going to be a massive protest to denounce Vladimir Putin in Russia. Like, what does that have to do with Canada? What does that have to do with our government acting like kings right now to fight against Canadian interest? What does that have to do with that? That gives the opportunity for idiots to gather together to hold up their signs. Apparently one of them dressed like a freaking unicorn. I don't know what that's about. Like, just an utter embarrassment people can get. Utter embarrassment. This is Canada participating in a No Kings rally, which is utterly useless. How's that going to benefit Canadian society? Is this going to make your groceries get better? Is this going to challenge the status quo within Canada? Is that going to go against the upcoming bills that are going to pounce on you for social media posts? Is this going to go and defy against digital IDs that are coming to Canadians? What an utter disgrace. What an utter disgrace. Let's show this again.
No Trump, no KKK. No fascist USA. 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 When our rights are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back.
That's just how, again, it's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. We have our own government to deal with. We have Mark Carney is in control of Canada, supposedly. And he is the one defying against Canadians. Not Donald Trump, not Vladimir Putin, not anyone else. Mark Carney, the Liberal Party. You should be taking this to Parliament and challenging Parliament to get on board with Canadians' interests, because majority of Canadians are absolutely abhorrent against the Parliament structure. They're absolutely detested by the Liberal Party. But, of course, you get idiots crowded together in this stupid way to go after the U.S. president and saying that, oh, we can't allow kings in America, but it's okay, we're allowed to have kings here. We're allowed to have Mark Carney, a central banker who comes from private equity firms, selling out Canada. It's okay to have that, but we can't allow Donald Trump to become president again. Absolutely just, it's absolutely disgusting. From a Canadian, I'm disgusted by this. We have our own problems, we have our own situation, and all you're doing is participating in a protest about nothing, because none of this actually helps society. None of this does any benefit. None of this actually challenges anything. None of this does anything except make you look like idiots. And the mainstream media is going to capture and say, oh, look at, resistance. Yeah, where's the resistance for this? The fact that Donald Trump's declaring war on Venezuela. Are people protesting about this or about this? Because that's nefarious. That's disgusting. That's something that I'd raise attention to, but nobody in those crowds is willing to bring attention to that. Which is why the No Kings rally, I said it before, and I'm going to say it again because this is just a sequel, are just absolutely garbage empty voids, just people that are personally detested by Donald Trump and don't really have real principles, don't have any real stances, don't have any really eligible thoughts and critical analysis of what's happening to their country, not because of Trump, but because of other things and other factors that develop with Trump. Trump is a symptom, not the cause of the problem. He's a symptom of why society is crumbling. And no one's willing to go after the cause. They're just willing to go after the one symptom because, hey, getting rid of Trump's head and not looking at him on television makes me feel comfy inside. But I'm not willing to challenge the establishment to bring healthcare or end the wars or actually do anything beneficial for society.